directed to him. We've heard from experts about what artificial intelligence can do to enable criminals to steal money, but now we're going to hear from a person, a friend, who had the unfortunate capability of being a target of a crime that involved artificial intelligence. And Jane King is very courageous to come forward today and share her story about being involved in a grandparent scam. Many of you in this room have heard about, and Kevin just talked about, the grandparent scam. The phone rings, the caller claims to be a relative of some sort and in some sort of distress. They've been in a car accident, they've been arrested, and they need you to send money right away. Offer the caller claims to be a grandchild, and a worried grandparent will always rush to help. And this is what happened to Jane. And I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen to you. So please join me in welcoming my friend, my AARP colleague, Jane King.
Thank you. It is helpful that Kevin just told you that anybody can be scammed. It makes me feel a little better in acknowledging what happened to me. I will start by telling you that I became subject to a scam even though I have worked in consumer protection and even worked for a time in Fairfax County's Consumer Services Division. But I did become a target for two reasons. One, I tend to routinely trust people, as you probably do yourself, and I think I share this with many older adults. I have the impression that younger people are more skeptical and more intuitive in relationship to technologies. I know my granddaughter is probably very much so. I am also a news junkie, which means that I should be forewarned about different kinds of scams, but I was not aware of this one. But obviously, I am older, and this makes me a target. First, a little background about my understanding of artificial intelligence, which has increased substantially with all the recent attention to it and listening to the folks that we just heard. When I was defrauded, I did not know that artificial intelligence existed. It was about 4 years ago during COVID. Just a quick detour to provide a bit of background. Haney Farad, who studies artificial intelligence and manipulative media, in other words, media that is trying to influence in a not necessarily good way, at UC Berkeley explains that I can now clone the voice of just about anybody and get them to say just about anything. Is that scary? And what you would think would happen is exactly what's happening. Farad tells a funny story. It's actually not funny, but you may be amused. He ended up talking with President Obama about artificial intelligence scams, but he felt like he was being scammed because he's so accustomed to the artificial intelligence replication of voices. It was actually hard to believe that he was talking to Obama. That makes sense, doesn't it, with all he knows? As Fareed said, what a weird, weird world we are living in. And I think for those of us who are older, adjusting to this is scary and difficult. But on to my own experience of being defrauded by the use of artificial intelligence. While COVID was keeping us pretty close to home, and I lived alone because my husband had died, I probably welcomed a phone call because many of us felt isolated during COVID. The fraudster who contacted me could take advantage of my total lack of experience. I knew nothing about artificial intelligence, and he set up the perfect trap for me. When my phone rang, this man, whom of course I did not know, told me that he was helping my granddaughter because she was being held by the Arlington Sheriff's Office. Now, for any grandmother, this is a very scary situation. He explained that she had been driving in Arlington, but had been stopped by an officer for driving while using her iPhone. I had no reason to doubt this, but let me tell you first about my granddaughter. Katie is attending the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, so I only see her during the summer these days. She is an intelligent, sweet, articulate young woman, now 21, who of course loves her phone, and even in the U.S. can keep up with friends in Europe, so she's physically connected to this phone a great deal. She's attached to it. She does work during the summer to help pay for college, so she's a very busy girl. We have a warm relationship, and I love talking with her about the state of the world. It's so wonderful to hear about a young person from a young person and their observations. She makes very mature judgments, and I have great trust in her. And she's very loving, providing frequent hugs, and she's also a lot of fun. And of course, because I would converse with her on my iPhone and she on hers, we gave a fraudster a chance to capture her voice. The man who called me explained that he was an attorney and could make the arrangements to release Katie from the sheriff's office. Katie explained, and now I'm hearing Katie's voice. This is the voice cloning that is occurring now. Katie explained that she was glad he would help her, and let me make absolutely clear that the voice was Katie's. I had no reason to doubt that it was she on the phone. And of course, in fact, it was a clone of Katie's voice. And of course, there was such a sense of urgency during this conversation. The idea of Katie being held by the action of the police appalled me, but the so-called attorney made it clear that I had to act quickly if she was not to be stuck in jail. Please let me acknowledge that this probably is starting to sound ridiculous. You may want to say, Jane, why did you fall for this and not call your daughter? In fact, I had been instructed not to call my daughter by this man who claimed to be an attorney serving my granddaughter. And I assumed it was to support Katie's release so her mother would not be alarmed. In other words, at this point now I think I'm also protecting my daughter. Of course, my motivation is probably obvious. I wanted to spare my daughter and my granddaughter by resolving this serious problem myself. This now seems very wrong-headed to me. And that's the point. It was wrong-headed because I was in the grip of a scam in which the scammer was drawing relentlessly on my love for my granddaughter and also for my daughter. The fraudster who contacted me could take advantage of my total lack of experience. I knew nothing about artificial intelligence, and he did set up the perfect trap. He said he wanted to help her and put Katie on the phone. So called Katie, the clone. Katie said, "I am so sorry, Grandma." She sounded so embarrassed. The scammer then told me that Katie could be released with $15,000 bail. Here comes the real, but that I would have to provide it immediately. I was instructed to tell the bank teller that I was taking funds out for home repair so that there would be no questions. Do you believe that? They just know how to take you the whole way. And the fraudster must have known that I had that much money in the bank because I usually don't in a checking account. So there's another area of fraud going on here. It is not an exaggeration to say that at this point, I was in the thrall of the scammer. I was not at all ready to question the authenticity of the man and his intent to help Katie. In other words, the person I'm talking to is helping my granddaughter. I think psychologically, alarm at Katie's situation was overruling rational consideration of what I was being told. A recent online Time magazine article explains the environment that the scammer facilitates. The situation scammers create often involves high personal stakes and tight deadlines. That deadline part is very important, which are meant to encourage the individual to spring into action, and make choices they would not usually make. In other words, it's just forcing you to act very quickly. The emotional part of our brain really just hijacks our ability to rationally think through the situation. It's no different from the bully in the schoolyard. There is the immediate pressure to hand over your lunch, and you feel that you have no out, no exit to run away. Yes, I was being bullied, but not aware of that fact. So I left home to go to the bank and take out $15,000. It may be unusual to have that much in a checking account, but I had that at the time and asked the teller for the $15,000 in cash. I was told a bondsman would pick it up. A young man did pick it up. He looked very innocent, but he certainly was not a bondsman. Having been successful so far, the scammer then said that the police reported that my granddaughter had actually hit a car. In other words, they're coming after me for more, with a pregnant woman. And get this, and the baby had been harmed. Another $15,000 would be necessary. So right now I am in the thrall, so I started back to the bank and did not get far when my brain said, stop. At this point, apparently the rational part of my brain was now functioning. What I had been told no longer computed for me. Adding to the story that by saying that my granddaughter had hit a car was the scammer's mistake. I was no longer in his thrall. I went ahead to the bank and told the manager what was going on. This was, of course, a major turning point. While driving to the bank, I recognized the scam for what it was and returned home and called the number of the scammer. I now know I shouldn't have done that, but I left a message that I recognized that he was a thug. That satisfied me, of course, but I was not supposed to do that. Recognizing that I had been dealing with a thug was not enough. I called my daughter, and she came to visit me right away, of course, and she was very sympathetic. We called the Alexandria police, and I reported the crime to the Federal Trade Commission. So there was at least the satisfaction of reporting the crimes. However, when I did this talk in Woodbridge, someone came up to me afterwards and said, "Did you get the $15,000 back?" No. The fraudster was successful. So thank you. If you
We're almost